Hmm. This is Wait, what?
Hey, Peter, you ready to go over this? We got your bridge officer exam tomorrow, and I think we both know leadership in a temporal crisis is going to be on there. We gotta go over this.
Yeah, man, I've been cramming on this hard. Like, I feel pretty good about all the command stuff, but have you actually read the material on temporal crisis training? I don't know, man. Maybe in context it'll make sense.
You know what? Let me just rip some of these examples from the study manual. We'll go from there.
Okay.
Let's see. Number one, your ship is vomited across time and space after a violent disagreement with a future space cop, and and you wind up on Earth in the 1990s. What do you do first?
Obviously, I would probably take the starship to the far side of the moon and then use our badass technology to like make sure that I'm scrambling any primitive Earth sensor devices that could scan the ship. I'd then use my superior sensors to scan the planet through the moon with senior staff before executing any sort of strategy to get back to the correct time. And of course, just in case there was any damage to the ship, I'd make sure that all the ship systems are up and running 100% before I stuck my dick in anything in the past. Because, what's the rush?
Well, actually, that's entirely incorrect. It says here that all the major bridge crew should immediately beam down and leave the most junior ensign in charge of the ship.
Bullshit, it doesn't say that.
Yeah, it actually says you get bonus points if you do this when the ship's all fucked up and damaged.
What? Uh, give me the next one.
Okay. Your away team has now beamed to the surface of 90s Earth, and someone starts shooting at you with an obviously futuristic space laser while in a major national landmark around hundreds of potential witnesses. What is the correct response?
Standard operating procedure, your guys get the hell out of there ASAP. You do not engage or put on a spectacle, especially not with any other future weaponry, because, Back to the Future, obviously you're going to contaminate the timeline. My guys can circle back later to assess if there's anything we can do to undo those damages.
Oh, fuck. Sorry, dude. It says here you're actually supposed to return fire with your own space lasers, but only after you do some sweet forward somersault moves.
Dude, it does, let me see the book. It does not... What the... What? Somersault? Are you serious? Well, I'll tell you what, man. What's the next one? Okay, is it about flying my big Federation ship over the highest population center in North America while everybody's outside and expose millions to temporal contamination?
Actually, yes.
What? Dude, who wrote this manual? Is it Jerry Taylor? Look, we are enlightened super science space astronauts here. I think it should be common sense that all of this is terrible and that we should be really careful about contaminating the time-space continuum.
Well, dude, if you need me to, I can go get that time hobo. He can come back in and explain everything again.
Listen, you get that dirty motherfucker out of my room. I told you the last time, all right? You know what? Fuck that time hobo, okay? Just call me Janeway because fuck this, fuck Starfleet, and fuck the Federation, right? I'm out.
Welcome to Voyager, please. A hateful voyage through the Delta Quadrant. My name is Joseph.
I'm Peter.
Peter, this is episode 50 of Voyager, please. Can you fucking believe it?
That is at least 50 hours that we have aired, not to mention all the time and prep and episode watching and everything that you and I have done. You doing all this editing, that's a lot of time.
It is almost a
That's
full
over
year.
2 days. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited though, man. It's all been leading to this. This is such a delight. Fucking Future's End. We're
Part
here.
1.
Part 1. There's more to come.
What I'm excited about is when we go to pick this back up next week, we're going to go back to Future's End.
Uh, this could use some Marty McFly or some Doc Brown time travel techno
Common
babble.
sense, yeah,
Yeah,
courtesy of
comments.
our opening here. Clearly, Back to the Future trilogy did not exist here. All right, man. Season 3, Episode 8, Future's End, Part 1.
We start out with a completely useless scene. Can I point out how ridiculous it is that Janeway is practicing trying to hit a ball because she's what's happening is she's throwing this future tennis ball up into the air because she's elected to take up tennis again because she's bored, I guess, and she hasn't played tennis since high school, and she's purposefully oriented herself so that if she succeeds in hitting the ball, it's going to careen directly towards the door, right? And then the door chime goes off and tells whoever's behind the door to come in just as she is attempting to do this.
Well, Janeway's a bitch. I don't know what to tell you, man.
It's like, so if you succeed in what you are attempting to do, in the moment you tell someone to come in, you're going to hit them in the face with a tennis ball, a future tennis ball.
I like it. What was the episode where... Oh, it's where what's her face was about to have her kid. I think that was Deadlock, right? I like when they show the bridge and the bridge crew on duty when there's not a big emergency or something awesome going on, which should be, like 80% of their day is just sitting in chairs, flying through space faster than light.
Right, right.
Still screwing around practicing your tennis serve in your ready room while you're supposed to be working. Seems good.
Hey, you know what? Even the captain's checking Facebook on his phone.
She already said fuck
happening.
Starfleet and fuck the Federation. Rules schmools. This episode is pretty wild, and I'm going to skip to the end here. I didn't think it was awful.
Oh, it's not awful. It is the best kind of entertaining bad. This is good bad. This is good bad Star Trek. You know what I mean?
I'm going to say even more than that. Like, I came in ready to just write pages and pages of notes and just rip this thing a new asshole. But I thought as far as Voyager episodes go, even though it's pretty zany and there's some dumb stuff going on, like, flow's good. It's an enjoyable watch. And I think that this is the first time in a while that they've put some consequences on the table that feel big and keep me engaged. So I'm looking forward about talking about this guy.
Well, they cut to the action pretty quick. After this useless opening scene about Janeway wanting to play tennis, we get a alert situation. Everyone comes to the bridge, and there's a handy little space time butthole that's opening in front of the ship. And they note a tiny little shuttlecraft-sized vessel seems to be emerging from it that Harry notes has a Federation signature. But whatever it is, immediately starts running hot game all over Voyager, trying to fuck with it, trying to kill them. Like, weapons are hot. They're trying to murder them.
Yeah, typical Federation fashion. I like the time anomaly they use. Normally, we see stuff that's, like you said, a space butthole. It's the wormhole effect. We've got a circular disturbance. This thing is like a big ribbon, right? It's kind of shades of what was the main...
The Nexus from Generations?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a long, like, purple tear in space that looks pretty huge. Or maybe it's the fact that the ship that comes through is just like a one-seater fighter that comes through. And like you said, it starts shooting at Voyager. And I'd say this is like the weak part of the episode for me, is that we have what we will ultimately find out is a time ship from the 29th century, I believe. Whatever the version of the Federation that's around then. It's a single-seater with a Captain Caveman, as I'll come to call him, because of this brow line this guy's rocking. But I thought it was silly that the ship's coming in with like super advanced weapons, and it doesn't, with the intention of attacking Voyager, and it doesn't just one-shot them.
Here we are, already out of order. There was a pre-credits teaser of something happening in the High Sierras in 1960s Earth, where a hippie-looking guy sees some kind of ship crash in the mountains, and he says it's far out.
The most unconvincing far out ever.
Yeah, and Ed Begley Jr. far out.
I didn't even realize that was the guy until I was reading Memory Alpha after. Like, that's how, I don't know, forgettable that scene was.
Yeah, we already forgot it. I mean,
Yeah.
it was such a forgettable scene that we started doing an episode recap and completely forgot about it. But anyway, this guy, Captain Eyebrows, Captain Braxton is this character's name, and
Captain
he says
Caveman.
he's from the super future of the 29th century, and he is here to murder Voyager. And he's here to murder Voyager because evidently Voyager's pieces have been found at an explosion in the 29th century that destroyed the entire Earth solar system. So the entire Sol system has been destroyed. Probably billions of people are dead. And for some reason, Voyager's secondary hull was found at the site of the explosion. And so Time Cop here, Captain Time Cop, has shown up to nip it in the bud by just blowing him up right now.
I don't. I'm
And
gonna
he's
pull us
fucking
in the mud
serious
here.
about it. He's not stopping. He's not negotiating. He's like, lower your shield so I can murder you, please. Let's wrap this up.
I'm gonna pull us in the mud on this one. Like the entire Earth's solar system has been destroyed, and it's just one guy who gets dispatched back in time to deal with this mess. Like, is everybody else dead, and this is the only guy around to do it, or do you have a 29th century temporal, what's it called, the Temporal Investigation Bureau or something, that is just dealing with catastrophic events like this left and right? And it seems like a huge deal to us, but to them in the future it's just another little blip. And their big problems are the Thanoses or galactic world eaters out there. Like one little Intrepid class starship blown up the solar system, like whatever, just send out Gary Caveman. He'll be able to handle this solo.
They end up, believe it or not, like going further down the road of 29th century Federation time cops, not just in Voyager but in Enterprise later.
Mm-hmm.
So there's actually some lore that gets built up as to like how this all works. And this was kind of their first stab at it. They do a better job of developing it later.
It gets touched on in Next Gen too, doesn't it? When Picard goes to Risa with Vash. Well, at least there's criminals who are from the future that pretend to be Federation time cops, but
that is correct. I mean, there's like fake time stuff in Next Gen, but this guy is legit from the 29th century and is legit trying to murder them for things that they have not done yet. Janeway is like, fuck this guy. I don't know who this guy is. I don't know if he's telling the truth. And I'm certainly not just going to just blow up because he tells me to, because...
Good call, Janeway. It's like the only good decision she makes all episode.
And
Chakotay's like, don't you think we should just let him blow us up? And she's like, no.
We're in the Delta Quadrant. We're just going to trust some dude who comes by and says, you have to let me murder you? Because he says he's from the future? Like, aren't you in Starfleet? I thought you were supposed to be the best of the best. What's wrong with you?
So somehow the super future ship does not just one-shot Voyager, and he catches him in some sort of a tractor beam. Meanwhile, the temporal rift is just open behind him, because why would he have closed the door when he came in? This captain's the time cop captain's the worst ever. Like, oh, somehow Voyager gets into the future and blows everything up. Let me just leave a gateway to time and space open behind me while I initiate, high energy fire or whatever. And it's actually Chakotay that comes up with this genius idea of how to jam the future tech weapons up to the point where Voyager gets the upper hand for a second, destabilizes that little part of space, and all of a sudden Time Cop's ship and Voyager go tumbling into this quantum singularity tear in reality.
And when everyone comes to after the inevitable flash, and everyone's on the ground after all the space turbulence, they wake up, and right there in the center of the view screen is Earth. And for a moment, everyone's got that look of wonderment of like, what the fuck, is this real kind of thought? They try to contact Starfleet Command, like, okay, well, somehow we're fucking back home. Let's figure this shit out. And Tuvok lets him know, yeah, so there is no Starfleet. We're picking up all this bullshit stuff that sounds like early 20th century, and they pin it down that they're not in the 24th century. They're in fact in the year 1996. This episode was made in 1996.
Mm.
I'm sure you're shocked. I'm sure you're
This
shocked.
is so gross. This is like playing an RPG, like and making yourself in the game. Like that's the level of cringe that this is.
Yeah, but like all these other time travel episodes that we have seen in Berman era Trek have attempted to do something interesting and unique with the time travel concept in terms of like where the characters go back in time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the DS9 ones went to a like future point to us relative, but
Mm-hmm.
to when it was shown. But
TOS era.
TOS did the relativistic time travel to the 60s, but like Berman era Trek, they always tried to do something interesting with the time travel idea until now. This is lazy as it possibly gets. Like, we want to do a time travel episode, so they're going to time travel to now. I mean, fuck, 10 out of 10. Great job, guys. Like, fuck, that's awesome. It's great. Do you think they did this because it saves them money? Like, oh, we shoot on location. We just go to fucking Venice Beach. It'll be sweet.
Do you think when they were sitting in the writer's room coming up with this, that they were at any point concerned that sending them to 1990, setting them to modern day would have been too interesting? That this episode could have possibly been too good?
As we alluded to in our opening, Voyager spends about 30 seconds figuring out what's going on. Their ship's all messed up, nothing works, but they get the sensors working long enough to realize where they are and all that. And they use their sensors to detect basically the 29th centuryness of the time ship, and they pinpoint Los Angeles. I mean, like, to maximize.
I'm amazed it wasn't a water plant.
It's like to maximize the fucking goddamn laziness of it. It's not just that it's time travel to current year. It's time travel to current year and where we film. Yeah. Like, we're not even going to go someplace interesting. Quickly, the entire bridge crew gets together to head down to the surface, and they leave Harry fucking Kim in charge. I remember this from when I last watched it, but like the benefit of hindsight now, I'm like, you are on the precipice of potentially fucking with all of space-time if you make any mistakes, and you're gonna leave the guy with the least amount of experience in charge of the Doomsday vessel that is half functioning.
Let that sink in, you know. This is against all protocol. You're taking the first officer, the captain, your convict boy toy, and the straight-laced, by-the-books protocol slave, who is also an alien and, you know, represents a risk of all that jazz. And you're going to leave, wet behind the ears Harry Kim down there. One of three things happened. One, everybody on Voyager in the senior crew was really just secretly giddy about the fact to go on Earth back in ancient history, and just willfully disregarded the rules and common sense and was just like, God, I want to go down there. Looked at each other and kind of nodded in agreement, like, F the rules, we're going to go down and check this out. This is too good to pass up. Two, during their trip through time and space, all the senior crew members hit their head really hard, and somehow
they're all concussed at the same time.
Mm-hmm. There's a very good medical reason why all these people came to this terrible idea. Or three, Harry Kim's got really bad BO today, and everybody's just in a big rush to get off that bridge like, whoa. And I can't tell you which option is the truth. While we're sitting here talking about this, you know, and the joke that we're poking at the beginning, like, big part of this, too, is all sorts of ship systems are offline, like weapons and I forget what else, and also transporter, although the transporter might break after they already beamed down. But stuff's not right, and they do a half-assed job trying to scramble themselves. But They're out there in free orbit around the planet. Like anybody with a telescope might be able to pick them up. Let me pitch you this one, Joe. They know that they're going to be involved in something that blows up Earth.
Uh-huh.
They could, if they wanted, just warp the fuck up out of there and go hang out on the outskirts of the solar system where nobody would ever discover them.
Right.
Right? And what if I told you if there was a technology that was available to the people of Voyager that would allow them to cryo sleep in perpetual safety and health, minus a vicious space clown, for centuries.
It's true.
Until it would be appropriate for them to thaw themselves out and reintegrate with the Federation.
That's
What
true.
if I told you that technology existed on Voyager? But that's not the story they wanted to tell, was it?
No, they dispense with any sort of serious consideration of the situation they're in a matter of literal seconds.
This is the most ramroddy of ramrod the plots.
I mean, at this point, they know the time cop was probably telling the truth because they have now time traveled. So, like, and they're at Earth. So,
there's not even a chalkboard scene where they're like, okay, here's our timeline. Here's what, like where like Doc Brown pulls out the chalkboard and explains to Marty about, the time-space continuum and all that. There's zero regard for any of that. They're just like, guess we're going to the surface and let's get some 1996 clothes. And Tuvok, you're going to come with us, but you're a Vulcan and you have alien features. We can totally turn people into Cardassians and Romulans, but we don't even have the 5 minutes for the doctor to clip your ears. Fuck it, throw on a do-rag. We're going to LA.
I mean, the next shot of them on Venice Beach is fucking amazing. The establishing shot that they pull, it is the most 90s television shot of all time. It's just this perfect cavalcade of every 90s stereotype comes through this panning shot that they do from staring at the ground and then across. You've got rollerbladers, you've got goth people, you've got ladies
fake boobs.
You've got ladies in bathing suits wearing stripper heels. Mm-hmm. You've got lots of long shorts, almost jorts, the near jort of the mid 90s. A lot of loose, baggy t-shirts, perfect Southern California sun, and it pans back over to our heroes, and they have on the most perfect ensembles. You've got Chakotay and what you referenced last week as his Miami Vice detective / cocaine dealer, paisley, pink fuchsia shit going on. Mm-hmm. You've got Janeway absolutely killing it in a white power suit straight out of the Hillary Clinton collection.
I was going to say, that's the same thing she was wearing in the mess hall when the Anarans were there and she got to learn how to play the blue balls.
I think this is actually kind of like a better version of that from the looks of it.
Yeah.
You've got Tuvok in what can only be said as a prophetic use of what you called the Tupac Tuvok. From, I don't know if you remember you saying that like months ago. But here is the actual Tupac Tuvok with a do-rag. And then you've got Tom Paris, who has come with the team because he's an expert in the 20th century. And the only clever bit of writing is that his expertise in the 20th century is anachronistic to the 90s. His expertise is like the 60s. And so he gets shit wrong all the time in this episode. Mm-hmm. And he is dressed like the guy who comes by and bangs your mom after your dad goes to work. That's what he's dressed like. He's dressed like that guy.
Sancho. Not a lot of minorities in this interpretation of L.A.
Yeah, that's odd.
Yeah,
a lot of white people.
That was a stand. I didn't see any Hispanic people at all. It's interesting choices there.
Of course, we have our heroes snidely mention that everyone looks weird to them. I'm like, look at all these weirdos in the 90s.
Right.
And
So this is where the plot wormhole ends, and that's how I think I'm going to start regarding these Ramrod episodes. Is you have the wormhole open, you have a series of ridiculous decisions suck the Voyager crew into the Ramrod hole, and then spit them out at some point where it's like, all right, now that we've just done as much stupid stuff as possible to get us here, here we are, enjoy the episode, and they start to just kind of slow down and breathe a little bit. And this is where I think, my enjoyment for this starts to pick up. You've got two plots that get laid out here. You've got the lingering subspace signal, which again is future tech, that I believe Chakotay and Janeway are going to go look for.
correct.
I don't know what's Tuvok and
Tuvok and Tom are the ones that end up at the observatory. But
yeah, but why do they go to the observatory?
The first kind of branch that we go on is we follow Janeway and Chakotay after they decide to split up, and they have a conversation that actually lays down some interesting canon for Star Trek. Apparently, in 2047, all of LA is destroyed in a giant earthquake. So something called the Hermosa Quake happens, and LA no longer exists. And it's all underground and becomes basically a giant coral reef on Earth, which is pretty fucking wild. That means like millions of people probably horrifically died. It was a Dwayne The Rock Johnson movie come to life at some point in 2047. Chakotay tries to hit on Janeway and fails.
Yeah.
Which was brilliant. And they continue on with their discussion about, the weirdness of the 90s around them, because the writers just could not help themselves. And eventually we arrive back at Paris and Tuvok. They're on like a beach. They're looking around. They're trying to find the signal. They're not having much luck. And Janeway detects a hobo. A hobo has a subspace signature, and they're very confused as to why this hobo has the subspace signature. But that's when we cut to the real delight of the episode. And that's when we cut to Griffith Observatory. So, this is 1996. This is a full 10 years before this person becomes famous. But what do we cut to, Peter?
Oh, you know what? I just ran a Google search for. You ever catch Way of the Gun?
Oh, what do you mean, Way of the Gun?
Way of the Gun. It's got a.
I have no idea. I have no idea what you're talking about, Peter. I have no.
You got the reply because it's a real choice. So, Way of the Gun comes out in 2000. That was my first real exposure to, of course, Sarah Silverman, who accuses Benicio del Toro of being Ryan Philippe's gay uncle.
She is credited as raving bitch in that movie, by the way,
and rightfully so. And even that, wasn't really the big jump off for her career. That was what I always looked back and said, "Man, I can't believe she was in that movie." That's great that you had that sound clip. I had no idea we were going to go this direction.
I knew we would.
Way of the Gun comes out in 2000. So, I mean, this is, 4 years before even Way of the Gun. So she is like a super nobody. And there she is, Sarah Silverman, plugged in as an astronomer.
Milking 90s chick to the max. Like born in a vat.
She's a Portlandia character that they have imported back in time for portrayal here.
And in keeping with Star Trek tradition of our guest star leading ladies, massive eyebrow action. Massive cave lady eyebrows. But that Sarah Silverman, so you kind of already knew that.
And I think that's what turns them on to that, is that Voyager detects that they're getting hit with a sensor sweep aimed at detecting the gamma radiation that the engines produce or something. And it's Kim and B'Elanna that radio down to the Way team, say that, hey, something just tagged us. We were able to triangulate its location, and that's what gets Tuvok and Paris off to go investigate. So they go skulking about inside this observatory.
Let's back up just a bit, because there's a lot that happens in between A and B there. Sarah Silverman's character, who's named Rain Robinson, gets introduced as this astronomer, and she gets in touch. She detects Voyager because she was told to look for a certain kind of radiation, like you alluded to.
Mm-hmm.
And the man that she contacts is called Henry Starling, and it is played by Ed Begley Jr., who's relative.
You may recognize Ed Begley Jr. as Stan Sitwell, the man with alopecia. Is that how you say? From Arrested Development.
And he's definitely like a that guy actor. So someone that you know. And Starling takes the information that this was found. It's in this radiation signature. It's in orbit. She's the astronomer is very excited and wants to tell everybody, but Henry Starling says no, don't, and puts her off and hangs up on Sarah Silverman and walks over to his bar to drink on this. And we see he's got a tattoo. It's the same tattoo as the hippie we saw earlier. And this guy is clearly some kind of tech mogul now. And this should, for any astute viewer, start to put things together. This guy apparently knows a lot about computers, that he does a lot of things with chips, and he knew that this radiation signature was possible, even though this technology shouldn't exist yet. And we know that the time ship went back in time, and here we are. This guy seems to know something that's going on. That's when eventually Sarah Silverman takes on herself to send a little message up to Voyager of like welcome to Earth. And that's when Harry Kim's like, oh fuck, I don't know what to do. Oh boy. And contacts Janeway Chakotay and say, yo, boss, someone's trying to contact us up here, so that's probably bad.
I would say the first half of the episode, Harry's doing a pretty great job being the little guy in charge of the big ship. And I was going to say that he might make the best, decisions through the entire episode, but then I forgot the part towards the end where he just flies a ship down there. But yeah, for right now, Harry's pretty on the rails.
Meanwhile, Janeway and Chakotay have kind of followed the homeless guy and wait until he kind of goes back to his home base, like this stereotypical homeless guy lair with like a busted up car and, in a garage or something like that. And they corner him and he doesn't know who they are. And then eventually like this realization dawns on his face. And it turns out that the hobo is in fact a time hobo, because this is Captain Braxton. This is the time cop that tried to kill them earlier, except now he's like a super duper old dude.
In some of the worst makeup. Like this guy, like I said, he looks like they weren't trying to make him look like an old dude. They were trying to make him look like a caveman. And as soon as they show him, because their first introduction to him is he's hanging up these apocalyptic signs all over the place saying, the end is near and all this other stuff, which, oh gosh, this guy does know that, the world's going to end, and he's actually correctly predicting an apocalypse. But yeah, you totally spot him as the same Cro-Mag looking captain from before. And not only is he old, but he's also super crazy now.
He actually explains the plot in a way that, it's pretty accessible, I think, to most viewers, even for a seasoned Trek buffs like us and seasoned sci-fi watchers like you and me. This is not very complex, but for the normal viewer, it's broken down in a way that, my guiding star is my wife. She's not a big sci-fi person. She's definitely not a big Trek person. And she was not only following what was going on, but was kind of commenting along with me about kind of the insanity of the situation, which I'll get to in a moment. But the way that Cro-Magnon Time Cop puts it is they are locked into a predestination paradox. And the paradox is this. The explosion happened in the 29th century. Braxton detected what he detected and ascertained Voyager's culpability in some fashion for the explosion. He went back in time to stop Voyager so that the explosion will not happen, but his actions predicated the time travel situation that they now find themselves in that will lead to the explosion. And that issue is that his time ship got found by the Sterling guy in the 60s. And eventually, he's going to take that ship, going to take it into space, he's going to try and do time travel, and he's going to fuck it up. And when he fucks it up, he's going to blow up everything. Which I thought, very clean, very good. You know, it's easy to follow.
Enough technology on the table that it seems plausible. They don't go into so much detail that they open themselves up to criticism. So yeah, broad strokes.
It was solid. And he, you know, this Braxton guy has suffered as a consequence of not really being prepared to be stranded in the 20th century as a enlightened 29th century space-time cop. He's been institutionalized. He's been following the guy who's got his technology, but he's basically useless to them and is now just kind of bad shit. And eventually, like, LA cops come by to hassle him, and
about his signs. People have been complaining about your hobo signs, so you're coming with us.
Yeah, it's definitely like the most community policing moment the LAPD had in the 90s.
The whole time, I'm wondering, like, and, you know, obviously the answer is because they're trying to tell this kind of cheeky, fun, light story, but what if Voyager had shown up right in time for the LA riots? Wouldn't that have been a much more interesting, riveting show?
Actually, there's a DS9 episode that kind of goes there.
No, that's not doing me any good right now.
No.
My question is, Sterling, right? Stan Sitwell. He knows that Time Cop's out there.
Yes.
And Time Cop has tried a few times. So, while he was crash landing back to Earth, his ship, like the ship's versions of airbags was to emergency transport him onto the surface while the ship crashed. Is that what happened, essentially?
That's basically what he says.
Because for him to get separated from the ship to a degree that Stan Sitwell beats him to it and somehow fends him off, and whatever would go into some hippie guy eating beans out in the woods being able to overpower Time Cop, whatever. But Sitwell knows that Time Cop's out there. Like, why wouldn't he have just had his corporate thug going off this guy years ago? It seems like a real big loose end for someone who seems very careful to protect his secrets.
I don't think they necessarily flat out say that Sterling knew Time Cop was out there. They know Time Cop knew obviously what was going on, but and Sterling knew eventually he expected the future people to show up, but he knew that because he had their technology, and it was just logical to him that would happen. Not that he knew. And in fact, I think Janeway eventually makes reference to the fact they talked to the original loner and they got no response from Sterling at all. So that isn't ever addressed. So that's not an assumption that's necessarily accurate. But eventually the LA cops show up and Sterling, or rather Captain Time Cop gets, basically run off by the cops and they go on a chase, and this allows Chakotay and Janeway to continue on to investigate that line of Sterling and the fact he has the technology. Meanwhile, Tuvok and Paris are headed towards where that signal came from that tried to contact Voyager. And that takes them to Griffith Observatory, where Sarah Silverman is currently attempting to do all of the 90s girl things. And apparently Tom has brushed up on his trucks, because now not only does he know what a clutch and a radio is, he knows how to hijack a Dodge Ram out of a dealership.
You know what? I'm going to cut him a break. I'm going to say that maybe he picked that up in the shoot.
It's possible.
Prison's a great place to level up in larceny, and maybe whatever planet operates the shoot penal colony has similar, carburetor technologies, and he just picked it up in the space pokey. One of his many stints in space pokey.
It could be, this is something that really fucking bothered me for some reason. Did you notice how all the tricorders suddenly were fucking sonic screwdrivers in this episode? Like, they could just do everything. There's like fucking Swiss Army knives. They can hack fucking doors and shit. And like,
Well,
put a fucking tricorder up against the engine and it just starts, I guess. Who fucking knows?
if Kit could do it with microwave jamming, I'll cut him a break here and say that Federation hypertech should really be in its element to use and abuse primitive 96.
But Tom and Tuvok, they head into Sarah Silverman / Rain Robinson's office before she comes in with her pizza, because it's the 90s, and tries to act like they're lost, and they have a meet cute, as they say in film, between Tom and Sarah Silverman, and he uses the wrong slang for the period. He says, I think, groovy or something like that.
Yeah.
And essentially, Tom eventually gets Tuvok to understand that he's distracting her so that he can wipe her computer of all the information suggesting Voyager's existence in orbit. And they try to escape while that's happening. Meanwhile, Sterling has gotten wind of the fact that Robinson's been telling everybody that there might be spacemen in orbit, and decides he's partly fucking ruthless as hell, and she decides she needs to be liquidated as Doctor. He's the Doctor Evil of this episode, and tells his henchmen to grab the quote unquote weapon, just in case future people are also there, because clearly he knows they're around. And as Tuvok and Paris attempt to exfiltrate from fucking with Sarah Silverman's computer, she comes tearing ass after him, having realized his computer's been fucked with, and they start an argument in the middle of Griffith Park Observatory's parking lot.
It's like movies hackers action that Tuvok did to her computer.
It's a big old skull and crossbones on it.
It's like hack sword, pont. Some Vulcan leet speak FUs, and there's a skeleton smoking a cigarette, flipping her off. It's some real 90s shit.
That's when the henchman shows up with what is obviously a 29th century phaser and starts just shooting at Tuvok, Paris, and Rain Robinson, and zaps the Ford truck, or the Dodge Ram, and it just evaporates in one shot.
It's like I Dream a Genie just blinks out of existence.
And Tuvok, the by the book regulations Federation officer at a major national landmark in the middle of the day, while getting shot at by a space laser, says, "This is the time for me to bust out my 9, do a sweet forward tactical roll, and return fire." That's what's going to be the right call here in 1996.
Yeah, because see, Tuvok knows that this is pre 9/11, so they have implemented the enhanced security features around major U.S. Landmarks, and that the odds of him being recorded are pretty low. He's playing the numbers. He knows what's up.
This is This is pre-YouTube. This shit's not getting on the internet. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah, Masquerade's intact. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, no problem.
So what I liked was when the henchman goes shooting with this mega weapon that instantly disintegrates the truck. That it just gets the truck. The beam doesn't continue through and hit Paris on the other side or disintegrate them along with the truck. And they just blinks the truck out. And that Tuvok shoots just this guy's gun instead of, zapping him down and coming over there and interrogating him. Whatever. So they got a fun little exchange. And after Tuvok shoots the gun out of the guy's hand, they run over to Sarah Silverman's mystery machine, Scooby Mobile.
Yes.
They pile in and then speed off down the way. The security henchman has picked up the gun, is running, has a very clear shot. This van's like, I don't know, 10 yards away or whatever, and just kind of like, darn. And let them get away.
It's very TV. It's very TV.
Very, very TV.
We get a quick shot back up at Voyager where Harry is delegated an important responsibility to Neelix and Kes so they can have screen time in this episode. And their duty is to watch all of the television. So Harry's like, well, we want to make sure that we're observing all the communication channels. So I'm going to put down our weird space hobos. I'm going to have them watch all of the TV in case something happens that we should be aware of. And our side plot is that Neelix and Kes get drawn into watching soap operas. This is what they're doing. This is what's happening.
I dig it. I dig it. I think that what it was missing here was a conversation about how vapid entertainment like this is actually forbidden in the 24th century because it's addictive and doesn't do anybody good, and that you turn Kes and Neelix into like the little worm guys from Men in Black that are addicted to coffee because in their solar system coffee is super illegal, but on Earth they can have as much as they want, and that's why they're here.
I like that.
I think that would have been fun. There's a lot of people up on the ship. You got B'Elanna still, you got Harry, and then you got the other 120 whatever dudes up there just sitting there twiddling their thumbs. Right. It's when they discover that Voyager had been scanned by this Delta radiation pass that Janeway's like, hey, beam Tuvok and Paris over there. And that's when Harry told him that we can't because the main pattern buffer for the transporter is offline. I can do emergency transports, but we have to be super close. My question is, you've got shuttlecraft sitting in there. And again, you can't think too critically in these things, otherwise the episodes fall apart. But like, they could have popped a shuttle out at any point and had, transporter technology. Whatever. But you got other people sitting around, and I think a fun... And I'm going to go back into non sequitur again. And I'm still going to hold Harry Kim accountable. Like, nobody in there is thinking, how do we take advantage of this? Like, it's clear that Voyager's plan is to fix the time conundrum and to bounce out of this time zone. Obviously, they're not going to invoke, cryo sleep or anything hardline sci-fi like that. But like, there's not even discussion like Back to the Future. Was it End of 1? Yeah, it was the end of Back to Future 1 where like Doc Brown just puts a letter in the mail and tells them to wait however many years before they deliver it, and they could have, put a letter in the mail, said, hey, Starfleet, Voyager's still alive, and all the stuff I should have told you in non sequitur, I'm going to tell you now, and we're out there, and don't lose hope, and Mom, I love you. But
at no point do they even entertain the idea at this point, and spoiler alert, it takes until the very, very end of this part 2 of this for the discussion to even happen. But regardless, I kind of come to expect it. They don't ever kind of take that second level step of them attempting to really take advantage of the circumstances.
Is it because they don't want to contaminate the time stream, even though they're down there having like fucking Star Wars Stormtrooper blaster fights?
I know, like they can't even credibly make that argument. But the Tuvok Tom team now has a Sarah Silverman and the Scooby Mobile, the Mystery Machine, and they're cruising away, and Tuvok is wooden as always, while Paris is trying to basically vamp for time with this lady, trying to convince them that they're secret agents. But in reality, all they really want is,
shut that cunt's mouth or I'll come over there and fuck start her head.
They just want her to be quiet and let them do stuff without having to explain anything. But still, if Sarah Silverman really wants to ask questions, they say that they're trying to stop the KGB again because Paris doesn't understand.
Like that.
Yeah, like he can't quite triangulate the right references for the time period they're in. He's just off because this isn't exactly the part of the 20th century he knows. But to a 24th century spaceman, and if you think about it, a person who's quote unquote expert of the, I guess would be the 17th century from our perspective, being off by 20 or 30 years in your references doesn't seem so bad to us, right?
I bet you if you take your average high school senior right now and ask him at which point the KGB ceased, operations, that you're going to get a lot of people within the Tom Paris knowledge range. So yeah, I don't blame him. it was a fun play there. I thought that goof went off good. Um, Sarah Silverman at this point has also fingered Tuvok as being something different because during the shootout, his do-rag fell off and she spotted his elf ears, which they attribute to a family trait or whatever.
And that scene wraps without much resolution. They're just kind of chilling. In fact, I think that's the last of them that we see in the episode.
Yeah.
They basically focus on the other plot for the rest of the first part here. And that's Chakotay and Janeway using their tricorder slash sonic screwdrivers to break into Sterling's company, which is, by the way, called Chrono Works, which is like the biggest red flag ever that it's probably a time thing.
It might as well be called Stolen Future Technologies.
Yes. And they're in there and
HAL 9000's on the wall, man. Like the security system, that big red pulsing light next to the door. Did you catch that?
I did.
I like that shout out there.
They also have another shout out in the scene when Janeway sits down at the computer to try and figure out what the fuck Ed Begley Jr.'s character has stolen, or where the time ship is, or any of this. She calls using the technology akin to using stone knives and bear skins, which is a quote from Spock from a time travel episode from TOS. In fact, from City of the Edge of Forever, the time travel episode of TOS, one of the best episodes of science fiction ever. I like that. It was elegant. And eventually they're basically hacking into this computer and they're figuring out all of Sterling's secrets. And that's, of course, exactly when Sterling dramatically appears. And
well, before that happens, I think there's some really good stuff that goes on in here. Early in the episode, when we first see Sterling / Stan Sitwell, he's chewing one of their business affiliates out over a computer chip that he found to be, inappropriate and not good enough for the new wave of technology that they were going to release. That's kind of when they establish him as an innovator. And as Chakotay and Janeway are talking to the audience saying like, man, this guy got a hold of this 29th century technology like back in the 60s. They got a picture of him with Nixon shaking hands, establishing what a big deal he is and all these innovations. And they basically say like the entire prime timeline, right, has all been a direct result of this guy's tampering, because and you're not seeing like fantastic technologies, right? Like this is very much 1996. Like, yeah, the computer is complete gibberish because in TV, computer screens always look, completely crazy. But it's not like there's flying cars or anything that's going on here that's unavailable to actual 1990s. And yeah, so they completely say that the entire Star Trek timeline and our timeline is a result of temporal manipulations. And the fact that like the time police never really detected it, the fact that Janeway and Chakotay have just identified it and it never really gets rectified. They're just like, yeah, we should not have ever been as advanced as we are. But
I want to save going down this rabbit hole because I have deep thoughts about this exact rabbit hole you've hit on for our mess hall that we're going to do on January 28th.
All right, let's bookmark it. Oh yeah, January 28th.
But the point that I'm just going to put a little tease out there. What if you are absolutely correct, but the 29th century time cops absolutely knew this was the case, and they knew this predestination paradox had to occur to enable all of that technology advancement in the 90s that would lead to everything else that came after it, and therefore arrange this to occur how it happened. I mean, that's also possible.
You think Captain Caveman could have been a sacrificial lamb?
I think it's possible. We'll save that, though. I think that's a credible theory. It's a Voyager tease for you. But eventually, Starling shows back up. His thug has the super phaser, and Janeway fronts a bit with him. Is like, listen, I'm here to take it all back. That's what's up. Don't fuck it all up. you're going to accidentally blow up the entire solar system. But he's just like, he's evil time thief Steve Jobs. So he doesn't care. He's going to just go, and continue to harvest his boon of technology nearly a millennium in front of him. And eventually, this is when Harry conveniently contacts Janeway and says, "Hey, Captain, what's going on?" And Janeway says, "Hey, download the contents of that computer." Starling doesn't like that, says, "Stop, or I'm going to, use my fancy super phaser on your captain, and she's going to be super dead." Harry does stop, but decides that he's got to rescue the captain and the commander. And he doesn't have long-range transporters. He only has short-range transporters. So in order to rescue two people, the captain and the commander, he is going to have to fly Voyager in like close formation right over LA, like lower than a fucking 747 going to LAX, where everyone is going to be able to see it. And he decides after about 15 seconds, yeah, I'm going to do that, and does it. Beams them back onto the ship. And wouldn't you know it, everybody saw it. And then Neelix calls up to the bridge and is like, "Yo, we're on the TV." Because, of course, everyone saw that.
No, someone who was taking camcorder footage in their backyard was able to rush this down to the police station or the news agency, transcribe these tapes, and play it as a live broadcast. Like the game masters were just waiting for you to make this mess up, and now they're going to capitalize on it hard. The shocker here is that he pulls this stunt. They beam Chakotay and Janeway back up to the bridge, and Janeway gives him a pat on the back. Like, there was a specific order given: do not let this ship be seen.
Yep.
And this is an ongoing theme for Voyager, that Janeway gives good Starfleet orders. In my absence, do not take the ship in traffic with the Vidians, who are going to attempt to ambush you and organ harvest all of us just to save Chakotay and I. Do not return back here. Ignored. Do not bring the ship out into plain view. Ignored. What other classic Janeway orders have we had ignored, only for her to roll over and be like, "Oh, that was the right move"? Like, of course nobody takes you serious, because every time you turn around, someone's breaking an order. You're just like, "Oh, okay, fine." The Chakotay dipping out to go run his suicide run was against specific orders.
The fact that he spends seconds making that decision. Like, it's not like he has to think super hard of like, man, do I risk all of time and space and contaminating all we are and all we will ever be so that I can rescue, two people from a situation they very well may be able to get themselves out of?
That's his MO, though. I mean, let's push back to Lame House on the Prairie. The hard time he gave Tuvok about not going and dealing with the Vidians against the captain's orders. Like, I would say this is well within the established persona of Harry Kim, is ignore common sense and do whatever your heart feels.
Which is probably why he's not command material, but, whatever.
Yeah. And also, don't bother flying a shuttle or something else down that also has the same massive technology the rest of your ship
Janeway
has.
in her fly-ass white suit, and Chakotay in his significantly less fly-ass Miami Vice suit.
I'm feeling what Chakotay's wearing. I got a question for you. The while they're in Stan Sitwell's office, like, the back wall is a hologram and it disappears, and then you see the time ship, the Captain Caveman's future time ship, sitting in like this Area 51 hangar, getting fixed and built. Do they use this ship as like the basis of the Delta Flyer? Because it's like this, it looks like what was it, the Clone Wars Jedi fighters, which of course come later, but it's like this triangular thing with like a cockpit bump. Is this thing later get incorporated as the Delta Flyer?
I don't know if that's explicitly what happened, but the Delta Flyer does bear a strong resemblance to its profile. So there certainly could have been inspiration. The same guys did those props, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they might have looked back at some of the old stuff they did and were like, hey, that's pretty angular, pretty interesting design. So
I'm trying to think of
could
another
be.
example too, where because Janeway's like, "Hey, you're hurting the time space continuum. You're poisoning stuff with this technology release you've been doing, and we know that you're thinking about going into the future. You're going to f up your calculations. You're going to die, and you're going to kill everybody with you." And like you said, he completely ignores it. And if anything, these events kind of make it seem like he's going to push his timeline forward. Like it's some super two-dimensional villainy right there.
They don't do much with Starling as a villain. It's just not. He's just not that interesting. He's very evil because he wants to make more money. And that's all you really ever get to know about the fucking guy. And that's the least interesting thing that you could have done.
Here's something else to know about him, and this is a direct quote from Bran Branagh. Sterling was our first great Voyager villain. What?
Give me a fucking break.
This is your idea of a great villain? Oh, clearly, a fucking bumbling two-dimensional clown like this is exactly what you're after, because you had one of the most compelling villains of all time, Seska, Queen of the Burns, that you just completely flushed down the fucking toilet, and then got the toilet plunger, backed it up so we could make sure that she was dead and unrecoverable before you flushed her again. And this is what you're going to put on a pedestal as the first great Voyager villain. Not the Vidians, who were terrifying, not Cullen, who was catty, not the Queen of Burns, who was scorching, but this 2D asshole.
Some fucking evil corporate guy from the 90s.
So, some hippie sellout. They commit some real cardinal sci-fi sins here by trying to quantify data based in 96 terms. They download what I think that his database off of his computer, and then somehow this guy is able to use the transport, because like they go to transport the time ship away and just take it away since they're already down there flying around anyway. She's like, yeah, just do circles around the building, lock the transporter on, and we'll try and transport this thing out, because what's the worst thing that could happen? It's not like we just effed up our last ride home through a wormhole over some Ferengi assholes. I'm sure this SoCal asshole wouldn't be able to thwart our mighty plan, but he hacks the transporter signal somehow, patches into the Voyager mainframe, and downloads 20% of Voyager's amazing computer library down to his IBM desktop, which I don't think that there's realistically enough data capacity in the entire Earth in 1996 to accommodate for even like 2% of Voyager's core. Too bad the info he got wasn't like, what Captain Sulu was having for breakfast that day, 80 years in the future.
I guess that's their attempt to make Sterling more of a threat rather than just like a joke villain. Like he's got like some mastery of the 29th century technology that he's stolen, which is like, I think, the explanation for why he has things that would be impossible in 1996, obviously. Like, he can do that because he has things that are outclass Voyager, technically. He just doesn't know how to fully use them. But we're at the end of the episode. We get the... He got some of their database when Voyager attempted to pluck the time ship and ended up failing. And ultimately, Voyager has also broken the shit out of the masquerade, if you will, and let everybody know that spaceships are real and here and flying above LA for some reason. And that's when they cut to the to be continued. One other note I saw in this episode, did you see that Sarah Silverman had the same experience that you related from your panel of trying to change a line?
Yep, she tried to change a line and said all of a sudden all the execs had their cell phones out, and it took like an hour before they were able to come back, and she found the precision nature of the script to be very stifling.
I could tell throughout her entire performance, like, she's not good in this. So Sarah Silverman is a comedian, and I don't, if you take her or leave her, if you find her funny, great. If you don't, I am your brother. but at least she's got a style, and that style she's very comfortable in. She is not at all comfortable spitting out this dialogue for this entire show. She's so very robotic in her delivery. And you can tell that the whole not being able to sort of like feel out her lines and ad-lib it a little bit, the kind of the in that quippy way a comedian would probably want to,
Yeah.
it hurt because she was basically she was Actortron 9000 in this entire thing. There wasn't a lot of personality to her performance. Like, if you didn't know that Sarah Silverman in 10 years from this point would become very famous for being a comedian, there's no indication of that whatsoever in this
Yeah, that's
instance.
what I was going to say is, if she wasn't to blow up and you weren't to be so familiar with her style, do you think her performance stifling would have really come across? It was just a kind of a doofy written character for, I don't know what function it was ultimately supposed to serve here. Maybe she's got a bigger role in the second episode in this arc, but
I mean, she obviously plays a role later on, and it's sort of like the same role that the Kirk's opposite in Star Trek 4 Voyage Home, like the native
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
figure that's also a romantic foil, like similar beat, similar idea. And I don't want to say she's miscast. She's perfectly fine in theory. It's just that the scripted dramatic television is clearly not what Sarah Silverman is comfortable doing, and believe it or not, they thought about making her a cast member. Like, Brand Braga wanted to like make Rain Robinson a character that came with them after this and became a part
What
of
is wrong
Voyager.
with these guys?
Yeah, I'm fucking, I don't know, man.
I'm going to go right back into it again. You threw Seska and Lon Suter and the Kazon and the Vidians all in the trash. And then you're going to look at this stupid character and be like, this is what we need more of around here. I know, again, we've been very hard on the episode up through this point. But like I said before, I thought it was a fun watch. I thought I was going to have a lot more stuff to get catty about, but it was easy. It was fun. And I do feel like they set some very high stakes that are reasonable for Star Trek. The temporal implosion, the contamination of the timeline, especially once they revealed that their reality as they knew it was already a byproduct of ChronoWorks stolen technology. So the sci-fi concepts are there. They're realizing them. There's some decent action in it. There's some fun special effects. And yeah, Harry flying the Voyager through the clouds of LA is like the ultimate moops moment.
Total, that's 100% certified moops. That is a hardcore moops.
Oh yeah. Also, by the end of it, while Stan Sitwell was downloading 20% of Voyager's database, part of that 20% just so happened to be the MF Doctor.
They leave with a lot of threads open. I mean, have confidence they're going to screw it all up in the next section. But I love these episodes because they're my favorite part. The kind of good bad, enjoyable, fun to watch, but just schlocky, stupid garbage that defies any kind of internal logic as to what these characters should be doing. But I will always take those aspects in service to something that ends up being fun to watch versus all of those things in service of something that is drudgery or boring or otherwise unwatchable. So this gets a total pass from me on the basis of it being a fun bad. It's good bad, not bad bad. Would be the way.
Star Trek timelines are always interesting, and again, like you said, they've gone to several different places in Earth's history. Time Zero is standing out to me, and that was the Samuel Clemens Guinan Data's head in a cave episode.
Yep.
I like when they start touching Wild West stuff. Yeah, it's usually like Worf holodeck programs. The 90s don't really sit that great, and I think ultimately was kind of a not the optimal choice here. I, you know, when we pick up in Next Gen in Encounter at Farpoint, Q's courtroom that he holds starts bringing in like some weird parts of um, Earth history that I don't really know where they fit in at this point. Like, remember the dudes, the soldiers that were like had like the cocaine janitor leashes that they're like taking hits before like shooting each other down in that crazy courtroom? Like, was that all a byproduct of like the eugenics wars? Does Enterprise touch on any like where this weird like ultra violent Mad Max stints of human history come in?
Actually, both DS9 and Enterprise end up laying some track adjacent to all that. Yeah, there's Enterprise has a whole plot line about the eugenics wars, and DS9 actually has episodes where they time travel to a period kind of before the grand chaos of the Third World War, and that shit's kind of all fucked up at that point already. So you kind of do. So we'll get to
That's
this.
also got to be weird. Like, you're talking about in this one, Janeway's like, oh yeah, this part of LA doesn't exist anymore and it's underwater and there's this terrible tragedy. Like, so much bad stuff happens on Earth between when they're standing and when they are born. Like, it's got to be like standing there on Earth before, Judgment Day happens and Skynet nukes all of humanity and tries to enslave the rest. Like, at no point do they ever discuss, like, we could save a lot of heartache and needless infant death or whatever. And it's
they don't
easy
even
for them
reflect on it for a second, and that's where this episode, I think, is not actually good. It's good bad.
Mhm.
Is that it misses all of the opportunity that it gives itself to tell a compelling Star Trek story within its framework. Star Trek is known for telling incredibly compelling time travel related stories, and this is just schlocky, stupid action in the 90s featuring robots Sarah Silverman and Ed Begley Jr.
Can we play What If real quick?
Sure.
What if, you had a superficial setup like this and all they had to do is go back and recover the leaked 29th century technology, and you had a contingent of the crew like, we could prevent World War III Hitler from being born, or we could do something great for Earth and stop some tragedy or whatever. And like, it's this type of episode that they actually pop a mutiny and have a contingent of the crew go off rogue and really just say, fuck it, we're gonna change time space and we think we're going to do it for the better. And what you thought was going to be a zany little time travel adventure like turns into like a deep crew piece.
Much better idea. It's a shame we can't teleport you through time to write for this fucking show in 1996. Yeah, damn fine.
Teleport me
Better
back
job
in
of
time
it.
to come through the writer's room wielding a chair like a WWF match.
I want to
And
let you know, though, that to conclude our discussion, I took it upon myself this week to actually find a rule of acquisition.
Oh, did you? Because I was looking through
did.
them, I couldn't find anything good.
I did. I went to Memory Gamma, which is there's Memory Alpha, which is canon, Memory Beta, which is like pseudo canon, like the novels and that sort of thing, and then Memory Gamma, which is all fan stuff, because there's all kinds of made up but still interesting rules of acquisition on Memory Gamma.
Mm-hmm.
So here it is. Rule of acquisition 267.
Shut that cunt's mouth or I'll come over there and fuck start her head.
Which one was that?
Thank you for joining us on Feature Please, A Hateful Voyage to the Delta Quadrant. We'll see you next time.